I watched my dog Darla shaking so violently on our bathroom floor that I thought she was having a seizure. It was 19 degrees in my apartment. In January, in Brooklyn, my landlord had illegally shut off our heat for the third week straight, and that was the night I decided to destroy him. The thermometer on my nightstand read 19 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside. Let that sink in for a second. My breath came out in white clouds as I wrapped Darla in every blanket I owned, her pit bull body trembling against mine. This sweet rescue who'd survived God knows what on the streets was now dying in what was supposed to be our safe place. Our home. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments below. I need to know if landlords are pulling this same criminal garbage where you live. Because what happened next in my building changed everything, and you need to hear this story. Now, let's jump into how we went from victims to victors. 3 weeks earlier, everything seemed normal. Well, as normal as things get when you're 43, recently divorced and rebuilding your life in a rent-stabilized apartment in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. I worked from home as a paralegal, which meant I knew just enough about the law to be dangerous but not enough to practice it myself. Our building was nothing fancy. 6 floors, 24 units, mostly working-class families who'd been there for decades. Mrs. Chen on the 3rd floor had lived there since 1987. The Johnsons raised 3 kids in 4B. We weren't just neighbors, we were an accidental family bound by thin walls and shared struggles. Then Marcus Webb bought the building. You know the type. Slicked back hair, Tesla in the garage, treated tenants like cockroaches he needed to exterminate before he could flip the property. His first move? Stopping all maintenance. His second? The heat. It started subtle. The radiators would cut out at night. Then for whole weekends. By the second week of January they went completely silent. I called him 17 times that first day. 17. Each call went straight to voicemail. Mr. Webb, this is Sarah Martinez in 5C. It's 31 degrees outside and we have no heat. This is illegal. Please call back immediately. Nothing. That night I heard crying through the walls. Not adult crying. Children. The Ramirez family next door had twin 4-year-olds. I knocked on their door with 2 space heaters I'd just bought from Target. Sarah. You're an angel. Maria Ramirez whispered, taking them with shaking hands. But what about you? I'll be fine, I lied. Just take care of those babies. But here's the thing about space heaters in old buildings with sketchy wiring. They're basically fire hazards waiting to happen. And that's exactly what Marcus Webb was counting on. Either we'd start a fire and give him reason to evict us, or we'd freeze out voluntarily. He didn't know who he was messing with. Tay 10 without heat. I'd moved my laptop to the kitchen, working next to the open oven set to 400 degrees. Darla hadn't left her spot by the oven door in hours. My fingers were so numb I kept making typos in legal documents. Then I heard the scream. Mrs. Chen. I ran downstairs to find her at the bottom of the stairwell. Her hip twisted at an angle that made my stomach turn. Ice. The pipes had burst on the 2nd floor, water had leaked onto the stairs, and in these temperatures, instant death trap. Don't move. I shouted, pulling out my phone. I'm calling 911. As paramedics loaded her onto a stretcher, she grabbed my hand. This 74-year-old woman who'd survived immigrating from China with nothing, who'd raised 2 kids alone after her husband died, looked at me with tears freezing on her cheeks and said, "Don't let him win." That's when I noticed Jake Wilson from 2A filming everything on his phone. Jake was 28, worked in social media and had that Gen Z instinct to document everything. "This is going viral," he said, showing me his phone. Already has 50,000 views on TikTok. The video was brutal. Mrs. Chen on the ice. The visible breath of the paramedics, my oven door wide open in the background. The caption read, "NYC landlord trying to freeze out rent-controlled tenants. Elder abuse?" Within 3 hours it had 2 million views. My phone started ringing. Local news. Housing activists. Lawyers. But the call that changed everything came from someone unexpected. Sarah Martinez. This is Robert Kastner. I'm an attorney specializing in tenant rights. I saw the video. I want to bury this landlord and I want to do it for free. Why free? I asked. Suspicious. In my paralegal experience, nothing legal was ever free. Because Marcus Webb tried this same thing with my mother's building 2 years ago. She died of pneumonia before we could stop him. This is personal. But wait. Here's where it gets interesting. Robert Kastner wasn't just any lawyer. This man had a reputation for playing dirty within legal bounds. He once got a landlord's own mother to testify against him. He'd frozen more assets than winter in Alaska. Some called him unethical. I called him exactly what we needed. The next morning I called a tenant meeting in my apartment. The warmest unit thanks to my oven situation. 18 people showed up. Bundled in coats and scarves indoors. Darla went from person to person, sensing the distress, offering her head for pets. Robert Kastner stood before us like a general preparing troops for battle. Here's what Marcus Webb is doing. He began. It's called constructive eviction. Make the place unlivable, force you out, renovate, and triple the rent. It's illegal. But usually works because tenants don't fight back organized. We can't afford lawyers. Someone called out. Robert smiled. It wasn't a nice-ass smile. You won't need to pay me a dime. We're going to make Webb pay. But I need every single one of you to document everything. Temperatures. Medical issues. Expenses. And we're going to escrow rent. What's that mean? Asked Tom from 3C. Instead of paying Webb, you pay into a court-controlled account. Legally, you're still paying rent. But he can't touch it until he provides habitable conditions. It'll strangle his cash flow. This is where the moral complexity started. Robert pulled me aside after the meeting. Sarah, you work as a paralegal, right? I need someone inside to coordinate. But we're going to push some boundaries. Nothing illegal, but we're going to make Webb's life hell. Are you in? I thought about Mrs. Chen in the hospital. About those crying kids. About Darla shaking on the bathroom floor. I'm in. What I didn't know was that Robert had a plan that went way beyond escrow. He'd been investigating Webb for months. Turns out, our building wasn't Webb's only property. And freezing out tenants wasn't his only crime. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Working from my freezing apartment, I became command central for our tenant union. My paralegal skills finally had a purpose beyond filing boring corporate documents. I created spreadsheets tracking every violation, every temperature reading, every medical complaint. Then Jake, our social media savant, found something interesting. Sarah, check this out, he said, showing me his laptop in the hallway. Webb is about to refinance the building. He needs clean title and no liens to get the loan approved. When? 3 weeks. Robert's eyes lit up when I told him. Perfect, time for the nuclear option. Now, let me explain something most people don't know. There's a legal document called a lis pendens. It's basically a public notice that there's a lawsuit involving the property. It doesn't prevent sale, but it makes the property radioactive to lenders. No bank will touch it. But we need grounds for a substantial lawsuit first. Robert said. Keep documenting. 2 days later we got our grounds in the worst possible way. I woke up at 3 a.m. to Darla making a sound I'd never heard before. Not a bark or whine, but a rattling wheeze. She was on her side. Barely breathing. Her gums pale blue. I wrapped her in blankets and ran to my car. Speeding to the emergency vet. The diagnosis? Hypothermia-induced respiratory distress. The vet's words hit like punches. A few more hours and she would have died. As I sat in that waiting room at 4 a.m., Darla hooked to oxygen. Something in me snapped. This wasn't just about rent anymore. This man had tried to kill my dog. My family. I called Robert from the vet's office. File the lis pendens. Now, we need more documentation for file it. I'll get you what you need. What happened next was probably the most morally questionable thing I've ever done. But desperate times. I knew Webb's assistant Monica, from before he bought the building. She'd seemed sympathetic to our situation. So I reached out. Monica, my dog almost died tonight. Mrs. Chen is still in the hospital. You know this is wrong. Silence on the other end. Then I can't help you. I'm not asking you to do anything. Just. If you happen to leave certain documents on your desk when you go to lunch tomorrow, and if I happen to be there for a meeting with Webb. There's no meeting scheduled. There is now. Tell him Sarah Martinez wants to discuss breaking her lease. Noon tomorrow. The longest pause. Then Mr. Webb takes lunch at 12:15. He's very punctual. I dressed for war. Professional blazer, the one from my divorce lawyer meetings. Hair pulled back tight. I looked like someone ready to surrender. Webb's office was exactly what you'd expect. Glass and chrome, photos of him with minor celebrities. A pudding green in the corner. Monica gave me the slightest nod as I entered. Webb kept me waiting, of course. Power move. But that gave me time to notice the folder on Monica's desk, slightly askew, papers visible. Bank statements. Refinancing applications. And something else. Construction permits for luxury renovations starting in March. My phone camera worked overtime while Monica took an unusually long bathroom break. When Webb finally graced me with his presence, he was all fake sympathy. "Sarah, I hear you're having some difficulties with your unit. My dog almost died, Marcus." He shrugged. "These old buildings. The heating systems are so unreliable. Maybe it's time you found somewhere more suitable." "How much?" I asked. His eyes lit up. "Excuse me, how much to break my lease early? I know you want us out." He leaned back, calculating. 20,000. Cash. You leave by February 1st. I pretended to consider it. "I need a few days. 48 hours. Then the offer drops to 15. I left his office with everything Robert needed. But here's the twist. Monica had included something extra in that folder. 3 years of communications between Webb and his construction company, which was actually just his cousin with a van. Every receipt was inflated by 300%. It was tax fraud on a massive scale. Now we had him. Robert filed the lis pendens that afternoon. By evening, Webb's phone was melting down. His refinancing was frozen. His lender was threatening to call in existing loans. He was hemorrhaging money. But we weren't done. Jake had turned our situation into a social media crusade. #Frozen in Brooklyn was trending. Local news camped outside our building. The city housing department, embarrassed by the viral videos, sent inspectors who found 47 violations. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "You think you're clever?" Webb's voice was different. Desperate. "I'll turn the heat back on. Just call off your dogs." "It's too late for that, Marcus." "What do you want?" "A meeting. You, us, and our lawyer. Tomorrow." But that night, before our meeting, something unexpected happened. Monica called me. "Sarah, he's planning something. I heard him on the phone with some guys. Something about a gas leak in your building tomorrow morning." He sounded serious. My blood went cold. "Are you sure? Get everyone out. Please." I called Robert immediately. Then I did something that probably saved lives. I pulled the fire alarm at 6 a.m., evacuating the entire building. When the fire department arrived, I told them about the threat. They found the gas line to our building had been tampered with. Someone had loosened the connections. A few more hours and we could have had an explosion. Webb was arrested that afternoon. The criminal charges changed everything. Webb's empire was crumbling. His assets were frozen pending investigation. His other properties were under scrutiny. He needed a deal. Robert was magnificent in that settlement room. He laid out our terms like a conductor directing a symphony of destruction. "Here's what's going to happen, Marcus. You're going to pay triple damages for the constructive eviction. That's $1.2 million split among the tenants. You're going to pay all medical bills, including veterinary. You're going to fix every violation. And you're going to give my clients right of first refusal when you sell." "When I sell?" Webb laughed bitterly. "I'm not selling. You will. The tax fraud investigation alone will bankrupt you. The criminal charges for the gas line? You're looking at attempted murder. You'll need every penny for lawyers." Webb's attorney whispered urgently in his ear. Finally, Webb spoke. "Fine. But I want a non-disclosure agreement." "No deal," I said, speaking for the first time. "People need to know what you did." Robert put his hand on my arm, but I shook it off. "You tried to kill my dog. You put Mrs. Chen in the hospital. You terrorized families with children. Everyone needs to know exactly who Marcus Webb is." The room went silent. Then Webb did something I didn't expect. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "I was just trying to make a profit. It's business." "No," I replied. "It's people's lives." In the end he signed. No NDA. Full admission of guilt. And something else. Something Robert had been working on behind the scenes. A month later we got the news. Webb was selling. His criminal lawyers were expensive, and the IRS had entered the chat about that tax fraud. But here's where our story takes its final turn. Robert had been in contact with a nonprofit called Brooklyn Community Housing Trust. They specialized in converting distressed properties into limited equity cooperatives. Basically, the tenants could own their apartments at below market rates, with restrictions on resale to keep them affordable forever. But we need $2.8 million for the down payment. Robert explained to our assembled group. We don't have that kind of money. Tom protested. No, but you have something better. A viral story. Massive public sympathy, and Mrs. Chen's nephew, who happens to run a major foundation focused on affordable housing. What followed was the most intense 6 weeks of my life. We launched a GoFundMe that raised $400,000 in 3 days. Mrs. Chen's nephew's foundation contributed $500,000. The city, eager to score political points, offered a low-interest loan for the rest. But Webb had one last card to play. The night before the sale was to close, he called me. I have another buyer. Cash offer. 20% over asking. You gave us right of first refusal. At matching price. Match $4.2 million cash, or I sell to them. My heart sank. We were so close. I looked at Darla, fully recovered now, sleeping peacefully in our warm apartment. The heat had been on for weeks, but the memory of those frozen nights lingered. I called an emergency meeting. The mood was defeated until Jake stood up. I've been documenting everything, he said. Every conversation, every threat, every violation. It's all on video. My TikTok following is over 800,000 now, because of this story. If Webb breaks his word, I'll destroy him online. His name will be toxic forever. Monica, who'd become our inside ally, had one more bombshell. There is no other buyer. I saw the supposed offer. It's from a shell company. Webb created himself. It's fraud. Robert smiled that dangerous smile. Perfect. Let me make a call. An hour later, Webb's lawyer called back. The mysterious buyer had withdrawn their offer. Amazing how that happens when faced with another fraud investigation. Today I'm writing this from my apartment. My apartment that I own. Well, technically we all own it together. The Martinez Chen Housing Cooperative. We called it honoring Mrs. Chen, who passed away 6 months after everything settled. She died in her own bed, in her warm apartment, surrounded by family. She got to see us win. The building is different now. Jake runs social media workshops for kids in the community room. The Ramirez twins play in the hallway, without their parents worrying about the cold. Tom from 3C started a garden on the roof. And Darla? She's become the building's unofficial therapy dog, making rounds to check on everyone. We kept some units as affordable rentals for families like we used to be. Desperate, hard-working, just needing a chance. Because that's what this was really about. Not revenge, though I won't lie, watching Webb's empire crumble felt good. It was about proving that community is stronger than greed. But here's the complicated truth I struggle with. We played dirty. We bent rules. I manipulated Monica, even though she wanted to help. We destroyed a man completely, and I mean completely. Last I heard, Webb was living in his mother's basement in New Jersey, working as a car salesman. Do I feel guilty? Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if we went too far. Then I remember Darla barely breathing on that vet table. I remember Mrs. Chen at the bottom of those icy stairs. I remember those children crying through the walls. You want to know if revenge is worth it? Drop a comment below. Tell me what you would have done. Because here's what I learned. Sometimes the system is so broken that playing by the rules means losing everything. Sometimes you have to become the villain in someone else's story to be the hero in your own. Marcus Webb tried to freeze us out. Instead, we froze his assets, his reputation, his entire life. He turned off our heat in January. We turned his building into our home. Was it revenge or justice? You tell me. But I'll tell you this. Every morning, I wake up in my warm apartment, Darla snoring beside me, and I regret nothing. Nothing at all. Before you go, if you've ever faced a housing crisis, discrimination, or had to fight for your home, share your story in the comments. We're building a database of resources for tenants' rights. Because this isn't just my story. It's happening everywhere, and maybe, just maybe, if we share these stories, we can stop the next Marcus Webb before he starts. And if you're a landlord watching this, remember your tenants aren't just rent checks. They're people with stories, families, and dogs who deserve to live with dignity. Treat them right, or you might end up as the villain in someone else's viral video. This is Sarah Martinez, signing off from my cooperative in Brooklyn, where the heat works, the rent is stable, and the American dream isn't dead. It just needed some aggressive CPR and a good lawyer. Peace out.